we received the script, which was pretty much the shooting script for Alien Resurrection. There was not a whole lot of changes, some sort of set piece changes and things like that, but pretty much the script that we got was the script that was shot. There was originally talk of Danny Boyle, who did Train Spotting, directing it. Again, a great choice, great idea. And we met with him and his producer. I don't know what the circumstances were and why he opted not to do it. But then Jean-Pierre Jeunet came in, and we hit it off with him immediately. He's such a great visual storyteller, and he appreciates everything that we do. And he's an artist, so he loves the sculpture and the design aspects of all this stuff. And we just had a terrific working relationship with him.
From an effects point of view, it sounded huge what they were trying to do. And it was shortly thereafter that we met Jean-Pierre Jeunet, and just immediately had a real strong feeling that this is a guy that could pull this off. From having seen Delicatessen was the only film I was familiar with at the time that he had done, and knowing that he has such a specific visual style. And I think that's what the studio was so excited about, having him involved. It was going to be a whole different take, on the Alien series, to go in with that kind of vision as opposed to what had been done before.
When I first heard that Jean-Pierre had been brought onto the project, I was kind of surprised, because the lineage of the Aliens, is such an illustrious, group of people, from Ridley Scott to James Cameron to David Fincher. And so, my first thought was, well, who is this Jean-Pierre Jeunet guy? And then, of course, having seen City of Lost Children, it kind of put that issue to rest, because certainly one of the strongest visualists I've ever seen.
When you look at his films, you really come to understand that he is one of the few directors that has a real unusual point of view and a different eye. It's like he has a third eye, and he sees things visually very differently than other people. And he will take something, put a spin on it, then put a spin on that. And I think there's a quality of uniqueness about his vision that doesn't exist with a lot of directors.
I could tell from his pictures that if he wanted to do it, if he had a passion about the Alien movies, that he would be great, because he had a lot of the qualities I think you need. I mean, I have a very peculiar slant on what I think you need to direct these pictures, and I thought he would be terrific.
I remember I thought it's not a good idea to make sequels. And when they called me, I thought it's finished, the series finished now.
I actually had the interesting experience of meeting with him on the day he landed in Los Angeles. He hadn't had his first meeting with Fox yet. And I remember distinctly him saying, I have no idea why me,
At this time, I was writing Amélie. And when I went to the studio to meet the executive producer, the first thing I said, it was, why you want to hire me? I am busy. I don't want to make a Hollywood movie. And it was exactly the thing they wanted to hear,
He just couldn't understand what they'd seen in his films that made someone at Fox say, let's get this guy. But he was honored by it. He just couldn't understand it.
I think if they hired me, I suppose, and they told me, because I had some weird ideas, and they saw it in the City of Lost Children. I knew special effects and this kind of thing, but in first because I was able to bring some ideas. And in fact, I brought a lot of ideas, and they kept it, except when it was too expensive.
I mean, basically, I met him as he was getting off the plane. He said, we need to talk again in a few days after I know if I've got the job or not. And when I spoke to him maybe a week later or something like that, at that point he started talking about his understanding of the Fox agenda. But what was more important to him, I think, was his own. And I think his agenda was, for me, this is exactly the same as taking on a commercial, except it's going to be a very long one. But what he meant by that is that he was completely willing to come in as a hired hand whose talent was obviously respected by Fox. But I think he understood his job to really be helping the studio do exactly what they had in mind for the franchise. And it was clear in his mind. He was like, we're going to listen to what they want. They're going to tell us whom they want. And they already knew by that time that Sigourney Weaver and Winona Ryder were in the film. It was presumably part of some package, at least prior to Jean-Pierre being on the film. And I think they already had a script written, which was very close to the script that we ended up working on.
It was so an amazing adventure to make a big Hollywood movie. And Alien, it's a nice series. I couldn't say no, I remember.
He really wanted to be part of the game. He didn't want to be an outsider.
The cliché in France is when you work in Hollywood, you are not free. And in fact, the first surprise for me, I was free in terms of artistic direction. And in terms of money, it was exactly the opposite. They wanted to keep in further schedule and to save money. And I can understand because, you know, this kind of movie could be so expensive with the huge sets, with everything. But I was free and they accept all the ideas. And I brought a lot of ideas. It was very important for me because it was the first time I didn't write the script myself.
Jean-Pierre and I spent some time refining script and figuring out what the climax was going to look like. And of course, he brought his Jean-Pierre-ness to it. But we didn't alter it much.
Everything worked except the ending. It was a big problem with the ending. We wrote maybe 5 different endings.
We really just took out the things that are too expensive to shoot, which I tend to write occasionally.
During the storyboard, because I made a very nice storyboard, it was a role of the game for me to bring one idea per scene, and I did.
Jean-Pierre, when I first met him, was extremely charming and seemed very creative and artistic and eccentric and very, very French, which was rather, it was in Los Angeles, so it was very refreshing. There was a slight conflict with his Frenchness and his creativity clashing with, you know, the hard-boiled Hollywood machine, and that did cause problems on the film. But on the whole, he was an extremely nice and charming man. I liked him a lot.
He basically had brought over some of his key players from France. He had Darius Khondji, who's a cinematographer who shot Seven at the time, and Stealing Beauty. He's a fantastic cinematographer. He'd brought his editor, Hervé Schneid, who had also worked on all of his movies. There was Pitoff, who's the special effects director, supervisor, I guess, from Dubois, with his whole French crew.
The deal with Fox and Jean-Pierre was to give to Jean-Pierre anything he needed to do his job and to be comfortable with his crew. And so that's why he asked me to come in LA. And then so I brought my people from Paris to do a big part of the visual effects.
For a cinematographer, it's a great thing to work with him. He's very exciting person to work with. He really appreciates really a lot the visuals. He creates a lot. He's like one of these very visual director, like Roman Polanski or Bernardo Bertolucci. He really appreciates the look of the film, the lighting. He appreciates the camera, the composition. He's very involved in it, and he's fun to work with. He's not somebody he's really great fun to work with.
I made 2 films with Darius Khondji before, and it's very like this. You know, it's not necessary to speak a lot with Darius.
He's one of those directors that knows exactly how we're going to shoot it. I mean, I don't bring much in terms of the choice of angles. He usually give it, he give me an angle that he likes. This certain distance between the face, the actors and the camera, certain angle, a certain vision of the scene, and then he give it to me to fine tune it to make it, better. And then he gives me the freedom on. Jean-Pierre always gives me a lot of freedom on lighting, on the creation of the mood.
He is the prince of darkness, Darius Khondji. He loves when it's very dark. And I thought, okay, it's pretty okay for this kind of movie because we don't want to see a lot the monsters.
One of the really school of lighting for me, one of the film with like The Conformist, Last Tango and 1900 movies like that, one of the film in the list of the film that where I really learned a lot, I think, watching them all over and over again, once the DVD and tapes came out of these films, was Alien, the first Alien. For me, it's really like a, how do you say, milestone in horror films, and also in design, in the way movies are designed and photographed.
What Jean-Pierre was about was his infinite respect for the art direction of the first Alien movie.
It was so new. The monster was so scaring. It was so a good idea to hire Giger for the monster. And it was new because the ship very old, with age, with the dust, and very not clean. It was pretty new.
He also wanted, that was one of his agendas, was to really match the savvy of typical Hollywood movies. I don't think he wanted to come to America to do a sort of Frenchy goes to Hollywood film. And one of the things he did as soon as he landed was rent a bunch of videotapes or DVDs or whatever people were watching at the time.
So we watched these things a lot with Jean-Pierre. Of course, we watch all the Aliens. I remember we were going to his house regularly and watching other movies or science fiction movies, and especially the three first Alien that were all interesting for different reasons. Even though my really favorite one was the first one, which for me was really like a masterpiece.
And I remember he carefully watched a lot of those movies and counted the camera setups. And he even obtained production reports on some of these films, including on the first Alien, because I'll never forget that the actual camera setup count for Ridley's Alien was around 859 or 60 shots. Let's say maximum 900 setups. As opposed to something like a typical summer action movie back in 1996 had, I think, a head count around 1,600 setups or something to that extent. And he was very conscious of that and decided to really raise the amount of shots. He really, really wanted to match the rhythm and the sort of heightened tension that typical summer movies would have in America.
Wanted to see what was good, what was not as interesting in the first ones, and and how we could really make the whole thing, make an evolution, create something, make the creature different,
I think it was very important to keep the Giger style, and the studio didn't want to work with him for a question of money, I suppose, but for me it was very important to keep the style of Giger. And I said to the crew, I bought the book of Giger's and I gave them to all the crew.
Because it's the three movies were so strong, then you're sort of obliged to be in the same mood, because the mood is good. Anyway, the mood is very good, and Giger is really at the beginning of this. So Giger gave his sort of print on the Syria, and then when you're making a sequel like this, anyway, the character of the alien is so strong. Then I don't think there's a lot of different way to make it, and then you give your own sensibility on the character and the story. And when you are like Jean-Pierre with a very strong world and strong vision, then you make your own. But you're obliged to have in mind what the other guys did before.
So he took this way of, like also the dark comedy, almost, which was interesting, I think, for the fourth one.
I can't avoid humor because I love to make the humor, And I was a little bit worried about that because I thought, is it okay in an alien movie? In fact, I called Marc Caro and I said, they asked me to make an alien, what do you think? And I suppose he didn't believe they are going to hire me, And he told me, if I could be completely free, I am okay, but it's not the case. I don't care because he is very, and I understood he's not ready for Hollywood.
There was no distinction as to who did what. It's a little bit like the Wachowski brothers. Nobody's actually sort of stopped the clock to say, okay, who did what. For a long time, people talked about Powell Pressburger without anybody knowing for sure how much Pressburger, intervened. And I think Caro and Genet were a little bit like that. It was a sort of two-headed entity. And I got the sense that at the time that Jean-Pierre was offered the job, basically they were both offered the job. But I think Caro turned it down.
He's very radical. I love that about Caro, that he's extremely radical, and he constantly wants more in the look, in the design of it. He's very, very perfectionist to the obsession.
So I think they talked about it, and I think Caro said, why don't you go it alone on this one, because I don't think that they'll let me do my sort of turn-of-the-century Jules Verne style of art direction, and if I can't have that, I'm not really interested. Which was probably a good call. Chances are they didn't want that, And Jean-Pierre said, fine. So he flew over to Los Angeles to meet the guys. But because they were buddies, he said, why don't you come out and still do some designs for me, which Caro did. He came out for about 3 weeks in June, I think, of '96, and did some paintings of costumes, which were then adapted into actual costume designs by the costume department.
When I actually really arrived on the preparation of the picture, there was some drawings, some inspiration, I think, for the costumes that were coming from Caro. But Caro is such an, really interesting, really like a genius of conceptual of design and things. Caro is an amazing person for twisting things, for breaking things, making things like really things that you haven't seen, that makes it very exciting.
At the first meetings with Jean-Pierre, we talked about his concepts, his basic concepts for the movie. And he'd brought some drawings that he and his associate, Marc Corot, had done in Paris. They were very basic conceptual ideas, and he said, ignore these drawings, but I want you to see them so that you know how we've been thinking about it. And I did take some of the ideas from them, and then I invented a lot of my own. And although when the book of the making of the film came out, I wasn't mentioned, and Marc Corot was credited with everything, which did piss me off rather a lot.
Caro is a very big friend of mine, as Jean-Pierre, and I know them from the beginning. The first time I met Jean-Pierre was on the Harry. I was a Harry operator, and he came to see me for music videos because he has some problems with the face of the actress. He has some stuff to get rid of, so it was kind of funny. And Caro, I did all his short films and music videos and commercials, and yes, it's my family.
I mean, on the two first films that I did with Jean-Pierre, Delicatessen and City of Lost Children, the impact of Caro was huge in the mood.
He came to do some sketches for the costume, and during 2 weeks, but he doesn't drive, and he doesn't like sun. LA is a worse city for Marc Caro.
Caro knew that because he tended to have more of the sort of art direction responsibilities, and Jean-Pierre Genet had more of the director's responsibility, dealing with the actors, dealing with the actual framing of the shots, if you like. I think that Caro sort of knew that he would have a very hard time working in an American studio environment. And that's sort of a reaction that you'd get out of most typical French, filmmakers or would-be filmmakers, is they like, it's a pride issue. I think they like to act as if they're very suspicious of the American studio system, as if they've got it figured out or something. And I think he just didn't want to be part of it. He just didn't want to have the sort of size, the bigness of what his idea of an American studio is hovering over him. Whereas Jean-Pierre welcomed the opportunity because he's trained as a commercial director, and he's got that whole part of his personality licked, and he had it for a long time. he knows how to be very efficient and how to be a good businessman where needed. And for him, that wasn't a problem.
Maybe because from the beginning I wanted to stay friend with the studio. I wanted to stay positive, and I did. And now I am friend with Tom Rothman, Roy Saragi, and Peter Rice and Bill Mechanic. I stay friend with them, and it was a very nice adventure. It wasn't easy every day because, you know, in first they want to keep the schedule and to save money, as I said. But it's a strange game because they push you to save money, and on the other hand, they are very happy when they have the quality. And it's a strange game. Sometimes you have to fight, to struggle against the studio, for the studio. It's weird, but that's Hollywood, I suppose.
Oddly enough, that whole experience sort of showed Jean-Pierre who he was in their relationship, and showed Caro who Jean-Marc Caro was in that relationship. And although I think they still meet on a regular basis, I'm not convinced that they actually will ever work together again.
I would have loved to have more input of Caro, but we had also a great production designer that we discovered on this film, which Nigel Phelps, who was one of the best news of the film. It was the first time I worked with Nigel, and I think he did an incredible work of design of the spaceship, of the hallways, the way it was all designed.
Nigel had worked carefully with Darius Khondji in designing the film, so that the lighting was integrated into the set. And basically every design Nigel was doing was intending to give opportunities for actual practical lights to be fitted into the set beneath little layers and grids and little holes that created rhythms of light, so that when you actually walked through the set lit, it was already lit for the film. There's nothing to do. You just walk through, and Darius had already worked out with Nigel exactly where the lights were going.
Basically, we did a lot of research looking at films, and then we had a lot of meetings. At the same time, we had meetings all the way along with Nigel and Jean-Pierre, the three of us. Especially the three of us were thinking about how we would design things, how we would make an evolution of the tension on the film, with the lights, with the practical lights, with all the siren lights, the red, how do you say, the like police lights, with searchlights, with things like this. And we made a big, like a big preparation on this.
Nigel came up with very complex sets. They were very, like Chinese puzzles, the spaceships and everything, although they were slotted together.
At the time, I think Nigel had done Judge Dredd, and I think Fox went to Jean-Pierre and said, "We'd like you to look at some of the people we're thinking about." So when I said Nigel had done Judge Dredd, that's what he'd done as a production designer, but he'd actually worked for many years as Anton Furst's assistant. And as such, he'd worked on movies like Full Metal Jacket and Batman.
Nigel Phelps, I met this guy, he's so close to me. When he brought me the first sketches, it was for Batman, I think. And it was exactly a kind of continuity of the harbor of the City of Children. And I had a very good relationship with him, and Sylvain Després was one of the crew of Nigel.
Fox was apparently hugely proud of their set because they used to just wheel everyone through that area. It just would bring everybody, stars, people they were trying to impress, God knows who. People were just constantly walking through and just admiring, and it was beautiful. You had to scratch the paint off the walls to accept that it wasn't rusted metal. I mean, every detail, every bolt. This is the way Nigel works. It's like everything was meticulously looked at. The sets were built a few stages apart from one another at Fox in America.
I remember it was pretty difficult to find some stages, but at this time, no question, it was Los Angeles.
They didn't shoot it in England because I think Sigourney Weaver didn't want to travel. It was as simple as that. She lives in New York. I think she wanted to go to Los Angeles for the period of the shoot, which was maybe October, November through February of the following year, something like that. And she didn't want to be too far away. So everybody basically decided to shoot the film in LA.
All the pictures have been really hard to do. They've all been rough really hard on the crews. In England especially, where we always did them, we worked till like 11 o'clock every night, and we worked Saturdays, and it was really lousy. We made good movies, but I don't like to see the crew exhausted. I think it's dangerous for this kind of movie.
It was difficult to find empty stages, because available stages, because it was a lot of big movies at this time, Starship Troopers and The Lost World, if I remember, and Titanic, and a lot of films. And I remember it was a funny story. The Fox studio weren't available because the wife of Robert Murdoch wanted to make a charity sale in a stage. And at the end we got the stages. And I was very happy because I didn't want to shoot in bad in location. I prefer to shoot at Fox. Even it was a construction site at this time. I was very proud to shoot at Fox. I remember each morning when I passed the gate, I was so proud. You know. It was a good surprise because I was pretty free in terms of casting. The studio didn't want to say, you have to hire this guy. Never. They respect me.
There was a last-minute thing. From what I heard, Jean-Pierre, who's the director, had seen pretty much everybody else in town. He didn't want to see me, and Rick Brigano sneaked me in there.
We're at the bottom of the ship. We have to go through the kitchen maybe 90 feet to the freight elevator shaft at the other side.
And they were just like a week, 2 weeks before they were going to start shooting. And it sort of fell into my lap, yeah.
So first of all, you have the meeting, have an audition, a screen test like this, camera set up in a room similar to this. You read through, he directs you. You can tell that he is responding to you. And then at the end of the meeting, he says, do you know how to swim? So that's a good sign, I think.
My own recipe.
I had worked with Jean-Pierre on City of Lost Children, and you know, he fought for me for the role of Johnner from the moment he got hired.
I know the guy by heart. I remember for the city I tried to do some rehearsal, and I brought Ron Perlman in Normandy, in my house in Normandy, to rehearse. And in fact, we played pool all the night. And in LA, we played pool too.
My personal experience, I mean, this was a walk in the park compared to City of Lost Children, because that was a picture where I was the only non-Frenchman on the set. I mean, I was the only that was a French film made in France, in Paris, with an entirely French production crew, staff, I mean, I was really the odd man out. I was the one that was getting looked at like, what's his problem?
Earthman. What a shithole.
I think part of the reason why Jean-Pierre might have wanted me around was because this was going to be his first fish out of water experience. He had made all his movies, you know, where he was cocooned and nurtured and felt very comfortable. And here he was coming to the United States to, you know, not only work in a foreign kind of an environment, but on a big studio film, which was part of a franchise, kind of a storied franchise, and had an iconic kind of permutation to it. So I think he wanted to be surrounded by as many people as he was comfortable with as possible.
Dominique Pinon plays in all my films, and is going to play in the next one. And for me, that's the perfect actor. He's so inventive, so nice, so perfect.
I think Jean-Pierre wanted me to be part of that show, and he was going to ask the Fox to hire me.
Alien, it was amazing for me to bring this actor in States, because Sigourney Weaver and the studio asked me to have Dominique Pinon.
Jean-Pierre told me the Fox already thought of me for the part.
When I told to Dominique, they want to work with you, he didn't believe me. He said, "Oh, it's a joke, believe it." And at the end, he is in the film. It's marvelous. Winona Ryder, everything was so easy for her, so easy. I remember one day, the new alien wasn't finished. And I tried to explain to her the appearance of the new alien. Winona, I'm going to tell you, he's white, he's tall, big, very impressive, and he's going to make ooh. And she looked at me and said, "Okay, Jean-Pierre, it's not necessary to explain to me. Tell me just faster or slower. It's necessary, you know."
The expressions, the expressiveness of the newborn, it's one of the most frightening, but yet feel for this. It's a real character in the movie. You understand it's not an alien. It's like a real character.
And she did a kind of different expressions, and everything was perfect at the editing room. She's so professional, so easy.
As a fan, I really, like, I was trying to steal things constantly. I have like alien goo at my house, and of course, you know, I mean, I have like action dolls from the Alien movies. I'm like a real collector.
Keep going. Let her out. And cut. Get him there.
Very nice.
Very nice. Very nice.
My involvement with the Alien Resurrection film, I believe, started because all that I do is underwater. That's my specialty and my cross to bear in life, so to speak. Billy Buttolato, the producer, I believe had heard of what I was doing and had called me in for a few meetings. We discussed the boards and the approach and how to shoot it. And Darius Konji, the cameraman, was part of our conversations also. And we sort of came up with a plan and orchestrated.
We discovered at first we needed a rather large tank to fit several of our sets in, which was really bigger than what was available in Los Angeles. We thought we might have to go down to San Diego for it. After exploring that, we decided, in conjunction with the studio, that it would probably be a good idea to build one on the stage and then have it here for future movies, and accomplishing our goal of having something in town and close by with plenty of cover sets in case there's a problem. And the studio gets the second largest tank in the studio zone.
It was shot on, I believe it was stage 16 at Fox, and they had actually dug out the stage and built this major set. I think it was 12 or 14 foot deep and 100 by 50 foot.
They converted an entire soundstage, which is vast, into this big swimming pool, and then dressed it as if it were a kitchen that was flooded.
The pool was about half a football field, okay, on the lot, inside a stage, and they rigged all that light, both underwater and above the water.
It was the perfect shooting scenario. They built all the sets right in there. It couldn't have been a better setup in terms of us, in terms of having a working space.
And never once was anybody in danger of that combination of electricity and water. I was astounded by that.
For the underwater scenes, for instance, was a long process. There was a lot of preparation for this scene, weeks of preparation, and to train the actors, to train the crew, to light. This was a very big challenge. And I had a fantastic underwater cameraman, director of photography also, but I actually designed the lighting of the underwater with always with the input of my underwater cameraman, Peter Romano.
Darius was really into fluorescent lighting, so I, in my little widget shop here, came up with our first underwater fluorescence, which I'm not sure that this is 100%, but I believe, at least for me, in terms of Hollywood and what's going on, was the first time underwater fluorescents were specifically put in the water for a feature film. And you can see that in all the behind-the-scenes footage. We built actually light boxes and threw in 4-foot tubes and had them all around. It gave a beautiful soft light, especially when we were lighting Sigourney. Obviously, fluorescents are a much softer light, and they can be controlled a lot more than dealing with like a 1200 HMI, which would be a lot of direct light coming at us. We'd have to bounce that. This gave us a great soft light source that we could move around the set and not take up a lot of space. We could put them right next to camera.
And I went underwater myself, which was a not totally a new thing, but quite new. I mean, I spent a long time underwater. I was operating a second camera, and it was very exciting for both for Jean-Pierre and I to do. And Peter let me operate that second camera. It was really cool. It was really fun to do.
Darius also wanted to get in the water, and he shot second camera on a number of scenes. He really wanted that hands-on, I guess, and as you know, a cinematographer for a film, you really have to get in there and feel it and feel the emotion of what you're doing, and he was right there. He was very good.
Underwater, everything is long. The big problem with underwater is communication. If you have a good communication between the underwater and the above water station, where the director is, sometimes the DP or all the crew, the rest of the crew, and the electrician and all that, and the underwater. If you have a good communication, it goes more smoothly and you can achieve more and more interesting shots.
You know, Jean-Pierre sketches out on the storyboard ideally what he'd like to see. We talk to our DP, Darius, and Pete Romano, our underwater DP, and we basically block the shot out like we would on land. Frame right is over here, frame left is right over here. Within the frame, we want to see people swimming from left to right or right to left. We want the camera to pan either way. And we go down there and we practice it. We set up what's called a hookah rig, and basically that's a long air hose to a mouthpiece, which is connected to an air tank above the surface. And the actors will go on frame right and breathe, and they'll try and relax and normalize their breathing so that they can hold their breath for a sufficient amount of time in order to cross the scene. Then above top, Ernie Orsatti gets on the underwater mic, and he'll say, you know, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, action, and the people will do what's required of them, swim and do whatever type of stuff that Jean-Pierre wants them to do.
2, 1, and background. Go, fire! Cut. Cut. Everything was great, but the rocket didn't go. Cut.
In terms of the actual shoot, I believe we went on for 3 weeks in that stage, and it was day after day trying to get through those shots. And I know it was hard on everybody, especially talent, because they could have no scuba gear down there. They were all holding their breath for the shots. So a safety or stunt person would bring them to the set, and they would just sit there with their mask on, breathing air. When everybody was all set up, then they would lose their masks, lose the air, and then we would commence shooting.
I didn't think I would do it. When I first came here, and before the shooting, we had some training in a swimming pool, and I was pretty bad. I mean, I couldn't breathe properly, and well, I finally did it, and I'm pretty glad.
They really were careful about. I mean, it almost, it almost made you want to go, what's up here? I mean, because you read it on the page, and they swim from here to here, and there's an alien chasing them in this shot, and then suddenly you're invited to participate in this safety mindset, and they're taking huge chunks of time and great pains to prepare you for this.
It was complicated by the fact that it was a closed set, meaning we had ceilings overhead. Also, we had quite a number of actors who were not scuba certified. Some were, some weren't. But that also, adds a degree of safety and sort of, I guess you could call it, confusion to what would be happening.
Was she a little high?
I got the part, and was called and told that the rehearsal process would involve meeting with a diving instructor in pools in the LA area. I can't remember where we went, but somewhere in the city, somewhere in the suburbs. And that's where I met Ron, Dominique.
I did more of my training with Leland for some reason, I guess because our schedules just coincidentally jibed. But we went to swimming pools all over town, like 4 or 5 times.
We met at these pools, and we learned how to swim underwater and how to use scuba equipment.
Basically, it's a lot of sessions. I think we had 10 to 15 water safety sessions before we even got to this tank. Then once we're at this tank, we had about 2.5 weeks of training. And our dive master, who's a certified instructor, has led everybody through the process of basically scuba diving, but with much less time than your normal scuba diving course.
I mean, we were in that tank for, what, how many weeks were we in that tank? 4 weeks. 4 weeks. We were supposed to be in there 1, I think, and we ended up being in this tank that was, what were we, 15 feet underwater? 15 feet underwater, and in sets that you couldn't swim to the surface on.
We spent the first month in a pool. We spent the first month like 10 feet below water with a roof over us so that you couldn't just go up, where you were so dependent upon safety divers.
They would be down there with your hookah to give to you at the end of a scene.
They have to actually take a breath on frame right and then swim all the way through and grab another breath. And for some people, that's a lot of work. I mean, it's not normal. People aren't used to doing that.
So for instance, let's say we had to swim from there to there. We would get down, a hookah would be dropped. Each one had a color on it for whoever, you know, pink for Sigourney, red for Leland, whatever. And we would get down there, we'd breathe on the hookahs, we could hear over the microphone Jean-Pierre was up outside of the water on the soundstage, and everybody ready? Yes, everybody's ready. And then we would have to take one final breath of air. They'd pull the hookahs up, and we'd have to allow for all the bubbles to clear. And it's kind of a tense moment now, because you've got 9 actors or something at some points down there. And you're virtually blind.
Probably the biggest obstacle to overcome in the underwater filming was getting 5, 6 actors together to do a take, because everybody was on their own schedule for that, certainly holding their breath, no fins, no mask, no air. It's somewhat of a survival, you know, position you're putting people into. So to get those takes was probably the most difficult.
We depended on our safety divers, who were all down there with breathing apparatuses and masks for us, for that moment when the director said cut.
When they would yell cut, you are now completely out of air and, you know, completely depleted of energy, and you need oxygen immediately. They're down there with tanks on their backs with an extra hookah and an extra mouthpiece, and they would be there. You couldn't see them. You'd swim, and they would stop you, grab you, and put the mouthpiece in your mouth. Then you'd breathe, then you'd grab onto him, the two of you would swim around and come up to the surface. And we did that for 4 weeks. At first, it was terrifying. At first, it was the scariest thing ever.
You know, when you see your main stars, main actresses, Sigourney and Winona Ryder underwater, and all the other actors, Dominique and all the others, it's just scary it's scary more for them, because you don't think, you know, you're underwater. It's not so, I mean, we're not in a such dangerous position. The technician, I don't remember, it was quite safely organized.
Well, Winona, I mean, certainly a fine actress. And I've worked with her a number of times underwater, even on Mr. Deeds. I believe that early in life, Winona had a near-drowning experience.
When she was young, she was almost noyée, I think, drowned.
She was 13 or 14 or something. And for her to have put herself in that position, even though she was extraordinarily timid, but to even have put herself in that position, to face that kind of fear, because there's no courage unless you face a fear. If you're not afraid, you're not courageous. You're just fool rushing it. She knew that there was a fear there, and she faced it anyway.
And for this film, she had to make the scenes underwater. It was a big challenge for her, and she did.
I was about 12 years old, and I nearly drowned, and I had to be resuscitated and everything, so I hadn't gone underwater since then.
Action. Straight up comes Winona, a beat, and then up comes Purvis, a beat, and we can take them right over here to here.
And I didn't think I was going to be able to do it, and so I talked to the studio about it, and I said, you have to like work something out where there's a double, and they said, oh, you know, don't worry, there's always ways to work around that kind of stuff.
She would come up right like that.
And then when we got to it, because I had really short hair, there wasn't a lot of stuff that a double could do, because you really see my face. So I realized I was really gonna have to do it. We had really great people helping us, but it's just very different. You know, you do it in a pool and it's really easy, and you think this is going to be a piece of cake, and then you get to the actual set, and I mean, I just remember the first day I had a complete anxiety attack, and I thought, there's no way they're gonna have to replace me. Somehow I thought they'd use a double and they'd just shoot like little shots of my face underwater where I'd just like be able to stand up and get my breath and then go underwater and look scared. But no, I had to do it. I had to go underwater really deep. But we did go through training, and we had really great people helping us, but it's just very different. You know, you do it in a pool and it's really easy and you think this is going to be a piece of cake, and then you get to the actual set and it was really difficult. Like I was probably the worst. You just have to like let it all go and float. Sigourney was very, very helpful.
Until like the day before we started shooting, I was playing a nymphomaniac on stage in New York. So I was like one of the few people who couldn't train. A lot of the actors were in the pool 3 weeks and getting certified and all this stuff. I've never wanted to scuba dive, so the day they took me into the pool and they took me into this horrible, dark, you know, kitchen with dead pigs floating in it and all these spiky things all over, and they told me what I had to do, and I went you know, up to the surface, which is hard when you have a tank on your back. And I said, I'm terribly sorry, but I really know that I can't do what you want me to do. I said, I know I'm very expensive, but I really have to tell you, I cannot do this. I can't even go in that doorway where you want me to go. And I don't know what happened, but I just stayed there all day with these great safety divers. And I mean, I went from completely freaked, hyperventilating, because I'm not like Ripley. I'm not brave. And
Sigourney was really the trooper, and she was there for every shot. I found out later that she was claustrophobic and was able to overcome that. And she was very calm, cool, and collected. We talked about how to orchestrate, you know, her positioning so that I could get the shot and get her out of there as quickly as possible. And she was excellent. She was great.
I think my husband saved me because he said, just, you know, play Ripley and act the scene. That was the only thing that got me through, because I thought it just isn't my cup of tea.
It was definitely tough, but you know, it was way harder for some of the other actors like Dominique and Gary, because they're strapped together and Dominique was upside down the whole time.
I had great confidence to Gary, so I didn't. I mean, the work they were doing he was doing the work and I was doing nothing, just lying on his back.
I did a lot of water training, a lot of scuba stuff, a lot of holding the breath underwater, and then I did a lot of squats so I wouldn't throw my back out carrying Dominic around with his big head.
The toughest part was for him because he had to swim and with me on his back, and that wasn't so easy, but he was pretty good.
We tried so many different ways to do it with having him attached to my back and me swimming, and it couldn't happen. It's hard to swim, so I developed a way. Between shots, I used to crawl. I used to grab the bottom of the floor. It used to be grating. So I would grab the bottom of the floor and crawl. John Pierce saw it and he was like, you know what? That looks really cool. Let's do that. So that's how that kind of developed. It was just kind of out of necessity because I couldn't get across otherwise. And it became sort of like a survival tactic, I guess.
Action, action, action. Get him, Mayor. Cut, 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 cut. Make sure Dominique's okay.
Ernie Orsatti was the stunt coordinator on Alien Resurrection. And stunt coordinators, especially on big action movies, are pivotally important. But in this one, he was the one that coordinated all of these safety rehearsals that we had. He was the one that coordinated the sequence of events. You know, he was the one that actually counted down.
So we got hookah situation here. You should come in from the right side, Kim. Right there. Okay, now as you pass cameras, so we got...
Camera's behind.
Camera's behind.
Yeah, no, I meant she's going to just go past
This
Pete.
is camera.
She's going to get past the step one, step back. Okay, from the window.
This could be.
So, and who's got a hookah situation here by pole number 2? Right here, right, Pete? Right out here.
Correct.
Okay? You swim through, he grabs your ankle, you're going to swim up to. And when you look back, get to there, lean down, bang, he's going to catch that.
So I go in on the foot.
So, you get that. So what may be good is if you try to see how many strokes in before you get that. It's going to be hard for him to grab an ankle.
Ernie Orsatti, our stunt coordinator, who was truly instrumental in being the voice, above the water to keep us going down below, letting the actors know what they should be doing, letting me know that I'm okay. It really turned out that Ernie was the thread that really was the bond that made it work.
Throughout he coordinated all the stunts, not just when we were in the water, but we really got to know this guy because he was what stood between the director, who was asking for insane things, and our safety.
2. Go divers, go clear. 1. Background action, go. And lower on the gun, lower on the gun, lower, and left a little, and fire.
Non.
Sorry.
Non, il était pas en bonne position. Là. Tu attends que je dise.
Air, cut, air.
Reload.
Sometimes it was, we had some risk. I remember one time a diver was outside to pee, and Dominic Pinot arrived, nobody to help him, It was pretty dangerous, in fact.
The take itself was totally different than the rehearsal. The rehearsal, you're in a mask, you see everything perfectly, you're breathing, it's calm. They say action, and holy shit! There's an alien chasing me, and you're out of air in 3 seconds.
Not only do you have to time yourself to know where you had to be, but you have to emote also. You have to act on top of it. So it was really, really tough.
I was very proud to work with you.
Oh.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, you die today.
The end. The beginning of my end. I'm dying today. I had to have a lot of patience with myself and my performance too. I mean, I had to basically pretty much go for a ride.
And action. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And don't, you know what I mean? You got to make it on that thing to make it boom. Boom, and that's the cut. The minute he hits you, stay forward and blow bubbles. Let's try it one more time.
I got tangled up at one point. There was a technical problem that no one could foresee. I was connected to the alien, who was a person. I was latched to him, and he was latched to a ratchet pole, and then it was connected to a rope, and that was up on top of the platform where the guys were pulling us.
Ratchet pull is basically a character swimming through frame, and then when they hear the word go, she's drastically pulled back to give the appearance that she's being dragged away by the alien underwater.
Do it. My best to the family. Let's clear out of the way when time comes down.
Something had happened, and I got connected to the wire, and I kind of got slid back on the wire as it was cutting through my leg, and I was pulling at that and kind of got a cut in my hand. Nothing major, nothing big, but enough to go, oh my God. I'm like, nobody knew anything was going on. So I had no air, and there was nothing I could do. I couldn't get loose. I was sort of stuck there. It lasted like that, mind you. I mean, it was probably 30 seconds, but for me, I really saw that I have to really take care of myself and watch myself in these, in this kind of action-packed stuff, because it's real.
I did get left hanging once. They brought somebody. My double had to go do something else, and they brought an extra guy in, and I came to the end of the scene, and I mean, when you're out of the air like that, and you are out of air, and there was nobody there for me, and I want to say it was Ron and his double saw. I mean, what is it? That sign that we did was, I think the sign was this, was, you know, fucking help me now. And these guys swam over, and we shared until we came up. That was scary.
Their job was to keep a keen eye on what condition we were in, be very sensitive to how we were going to feel when that cut was yelled, and what they would have to do in order to find us, because we couldn't see without the mask. I mean, in order to keep the water clean enough for us to perform in for a month, there were inordinate amount of chlorine, and then they dumped in, you know, 1 million gallons of milk to create a diffusion for the lights, and, you know, heads of lettuce because it's a kitchen, and, you know, onions floating in all pots and pans. I mean, you know, it was like a, you know, an obstacle course.
For me, it was easy. I was outside, you know, but for them, it was, they didn't see anything underwater because we put some milk to get water more white, you know.
Water, like when it's kept for that long, things happen in the water that you don't want to know about. And when divers are down there all day, they don't hold it, if you know what I mean. It was pretty disgusting. And there was just like snot and phlegm floating by, and just really foul stuff. And plus there was like lettuce and like meat, and when all that stuff, you know, it's like it stews when you shoot for weeks and weeks. It stews because they can't drain it and refill it with fresh water for you.
They were sick because in the ear some infection, because after a while we understood they pee on the water, you know.
All the actors did a tremendous job underwater, and acting underwater is a very difficult thing. Tom had the added burden of wearing an alien suit on top of that, and we had a puppeteer in the water with him to control the facial functions.
You've got a hookah in his mouth. She has no hands, so you've got to look there to get it in. If your head's having any trouble, I told him to yank that glove off and take it from you. Usually we take it from you. So when we're down there, I want to try before we go too far to see if you can hit his mouth right there. Anybody got any questions? Can we do this?
They deserve a lot of credit too, because for all the stuff that we went through under the water, this guy went through it with all this stuff on, and that's all foam rubber, and that's, once it gets wet, it gets pretty heavy. And you can't get to him right away because he's all underneath all this stuff.
Great, Tom. Last one looks really cool.
Water's coming out of the back of the head really good, Tom. Keep it back like that.
In the alien suit, I just had 2 little slots in the, I'm inside the neck of the creature. I'm looking at through tiny slots, and I had a small slot to breathe through. And my sound is cut off because I'm encased in foam rubber and fiberglass and plastic. And added to that, being underwater, it was even more isolating. And the only way I could get through was just completely trust the underwater divers. Rod and his crew of divers had all the necessary breathing apparatus, because we were in 12 feet of water, and in most cases the set had a ceiling on it, so if we needed air we couldn't just simply swim to the surface. And on top of that, in the suit, the way it takes on water and the way the whole head fills with the water, I couldn't have done any swimming anywhere anyway.
Lower, I like that, swim, and get in the hookah, he's sinking, get in the hookah, get in there.
For my part, my contribution to the underwater sequence is that I stayed as far away from the water tank as I could, so that I could be nice and dry and watch on TV and cross my fingers that 50% of the company didn't drown before my eyes. So it was really all Tom. I mean, it was communication was very difficult under the water, and I sure as heck wasn't about to get in there to help him.
After Christmas, Jean-Pierre made the first cuts of just this scene. And we screened the scene with the crew on the sets, and Jean-Pierre showed the scene to the studio, and everybody was happy. So it was cool.
We got to see all of that cut together, and that was, yeah, because we'd spent a month in that pool. We'd all gone through a lot of work.
It was very humbling and very, very arduous, and I think that, you know, if you ask everybody who was in that sequence, they'll all have a nightmare or two to share with you.
It was a wild time. It was kind of a miracle that nobody got hurt.
That was the first thing we all did together. And I guess that's how our ensemble was forged, because we all came out of it doing, you know, halfway decently, some people really well. Myself, I survived. Winona survived.
It was like the worst experience of my life, hands down, I think.
It was a lot of camaraderie, a lot of intense hours, you know, but it was a very enjoyable experience, very enjoyable.
The first thing we do is we get a script and we get storyboards that the director puts together, and we break down the script into scene numbers. And as you can see, this entire storyboard is this particular script.
Well, the first thing that jumped out at me when I read the script for Alien Resurrection was that it was constructed more like a comic book than it was a script. It was over 220 pages, I believe, and the entire left-hand side of every script page had storyboards, and the entire right-hand side had the script notes and the dialogue. So immediately I understood the importance of the visuals in this movie, because how many scripts do you know that are constructed with the visuals attached to, you know, to the actual text?
And not just the visual effects in the film, the entire, all dialogue sequences, virtually every angle that Jean-Pierre intended to use.
So it's to break down everything and to sort out what should be you know, CG alien, what should be on the set piece, what should be CG for the set, or what is puppeteers.
And we figure out with the supervisors what the methodology is. Some methodologies are CGI, some of it's matte painting with miniatures, or plate shooting with other kinds of animation.
You split the work and to find out what is the best regarding the idea of Jean-Pierre, what was the best for him to make the shooting as simple as possible.
Those decisions are made, and Pitof and I made them early on, and really we made them in a closed room. It was up to the two of us to decide how we would do something. Because as I said, the script had been broken down into a very detailed storyboard, we knew what Jean-Pierre wanted.
And we actually make a list what it is, have the director approve it, and then we actually put it in some type of Bible format, which we have all the shots and scene numbers labeled with a different methodology, who the vendors are, and we kind of track it. And this is basically our Bible of all the different types of shots on this particular film.
We were able to save a great deal of money by bringing in the company from overseas, Pitof's company from overseas, and do things in-house. You know, that had been tried on a couple of other shows around, you know, in the years preceding Alien Resurrection, and had seemed to work out, so we didn't feel like it was that we were taking a big leap of faith.
The French company Dubois was selected because they did the City of the Children, and a lot of this stuff, this matte painting stuff, the compositing stuff, and all that. So, and we, Jean-Pierre and I, of course, we know very well Dubois, so we are very comfortable with them.
They ended up compositing all the miniature shots with backgrounds and star fields, and we said, well, they'll do all of that, but when it comes to things like the alien, we have to go out, we have to get someone who's really good, who has 3D experience in creating characters. You know, the Alien series had never had a computer-generated alien. So this was going to be new.
For the CG, we select Blue Sky Studio in New York because they did this movie called Joe's Apartment.
It featured a lot of cockroaches, and the character animation that they got into some of those cockroaches is what impressed us the most.
Which was really well animated, and the interaction was really good, and we are really impressed by their work on this movie. So we were really happy to work with them for that.
They certainly had the talent And except for their distance, which we had to figure out, what we were going to do with, talking to them on a regular basis, except for the distance, everything seemed perfect. And ultimately, what we did to fix that one problem was there was something called sprint drums at the time, which is archaic now, but it was a way to have a camera on our end and a computer screen where we could see their animations, make comments on them, scroll on right onto the screen, and they would be able to see what we're writing. We'd say, well, no, this area, you could improve that, and you see how he moves like this. Take this path would be better. See if that looks.
Creature has no texture maps. It's almost like a kind of a window dummy performing the action that we'd like the alien to perform.
And then we had other assorted 3D shots that VIFX was going to do.
VIFX in Los Angeles for other CG stuff. We did a really good stuff too. And the last company was Vertex, a company from Taiwan, who did all the roto, to all the wire removal and all the retouching on the image. And so it's funny because there's one Californian company, a New Yorker company, a Taiwan company, a French company. It's a word movie.
The reason that we broke things up like that, it made sense for the strengths that particular companies have. It's the way we all, supervisors will always work. You work towards the strength of a company, try not to give them things that they're going to struggle with.
At this time, it was kind of the beginning of the CG creator. I can't remember, but I think it's kind of 30 or 40 shots with CG. It's a lot, yeah.
This is probably one of the biggest visual effects films that I've done in my last 10 years of working. What's extensive about it is the complexity of the shots. It's multi-layer compositing. It's not just your straight 2D compositing. We have 8 to 15 levels on some of these shots that you'll see in the film.
In the first Alien, the most interesting thing, you can't see the alien. But after 3 movies, I thought, now we know the alien. We can show more because, the surprise is finished now.
So Blue Sky had in charge the alien. So they had to build the CG alien and to link this CG alien with the ADL alien, which was the practical one.
There was some great nature footage that Jean-Pierre found that he was using with Blue Sky, who was doing the CGI versions of the alien, and some of it was crocodile, some of it was marine iguana, because of the way they wiggled their entire body and not just their tail. We built a version that could be towed, that had a tail that would swim like that, which was used, I think, maybe in one place. But most of it was, completely submerged underwater. So most of it, when you see the film, is the CGI versions swimming underwater.
Well, when Blue Sky came in, the look of the alien had already been established in terms of the suit. So they were being very respectful, saying, this is the look, we just want to match this and make sure it looks right. And tell us about the movement of this thing. And there were a couple of times where I would put on the suit and just do movement tests, run-bys in front of the camera, because there's also a CGI version of it stepping over the camera and walking down the hallway and stopping and turning back. So we did some motion studies like that. It was just used as a reference.
They had to swim for the first time, and I remember they proposed me to put the legs in 3 parts, a little bit like a frog, and because this time we could see the legs. It was the first time because CGI. But the man in suit obviously had normal legs, and it was forbidden to shoot it because it was a man in suit. It's very difficult to shoot the man in suit, to forget it's a man, you have to make just close up, very close up.
With me in a suit, just walking with normal configuration of a human leg with a knee and an ankle and a hip is different from the alien. It has an extra joint. It's got that extended foot pad like a dog leg sort of thing. So they had to transcribe all my movements into matching that kind of physical structure.
What we provided for Blue Sky was a small-scale sculpture of the alien so that it would be exact to what we were doing. We scaled it precisely. It's a beautiful sculpture that Steve Wang did, an interpretation of the full-scale suit. And then we just sent them a head, full-scale head for them to scan, and a full-scale tail for them to scan, and then they could just combine the pieces.
And it was tough because, you know, to have really the good texture and the perfect animation that match with CG and real one, and also very complicated because deal with a CG creature underwater is a big deal, and through smokes, and it was kind
and shirt. And then give a little turn one way or the other. And take your hand out and put your hands close to your side so you don't have much air gap between your side there. Squint your elbows right to your, yeah. Now turn a little bit. And look up. Okay, turn straight towards me. Drop that shoulder a little bit if you can.
On two, you can just pull both of them kind of sideways. You might have to gig since it's
So 1, next slow, 2, you start going 3, everything comes off. Right. 1, 2, 3.
I'm right. Yeah, I'll say 1, 2, 3, action, but that's not it yet, okay? Everyone ready?
Yep.
Here we go. 1, 2, 3, action. Okay. That's it, man. Okay, here we go. Come right in front of you there, Tim, so you're never seen every time. Okay, everyone, ready? Ready and action. Struggling a little more, legs. Arm up against the wall if you can, a little there. And left arm. Even more there, Jim, pull it. And stomach. And pelvis. Right leg. Left leg. As far as you can, man. Pull that wall over. All the way in. Right arm. And hold that.
We're rolling. We're rolling. Action. We're rolling.
On 3, pull it against your chest. Yeah, so we'll go 1, 2. We're doing it at the same time. 1, 2, 3. And as soon as it hits his chest, you and I hit at the same time.
Okay. Ready? 1, 2, 3. All right, let go.
Yeah! Okay, we're all set.
We're rolling.
Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4.
It made it this way.
Okay. And 3, 2, 1, action.
Okay, we were a little misaligned with the tongue, but.
Okay, great. Okay, and cut.
Okay.
Okay, put your arms together.
This is going to be too low.
While you do, just
That's
shake
going
it
to
up.
be too low.
All right, touch me. Hi, Mom. I'm okay.
Okay? Join? Okay, let's step back.
You guys see you guys in position there, Rocky Pen?
Higher? Yeah, if you can help line up 2, David, you're fine.
Do you mind? Good. Okay.
And second. more at your waist. Okay, ready, and hit. And cut.
Rolling.
Rolling tape, ready, and action. And cut. Action. And cut.
It's rolling. The camera is rolling. Oh. Louis, tu peux m'enlever le...
Ok.
Merci. Merci beaucoup.
Yes,
Yes?
yes.
And just tell them that this will be much more refined. Because obviously this just came off. The hairpiece is hanging.
Oops. Do you want to see how this photographs?
I'm already rolling.
These are going to be a different color. See, they're like little
Yes,
claws.
yes, yes. You didn't see them in the video? Turn around, yes. And now I see them. Yeah. Turn around, please, Sigourney. Oh, yeah, it's great. Looks like quite interesting, this thing. The way it makes the hair, it's kind of a sculpture almost.
We did this in New York.
What did you do, Neil?
We tore this. Tore it open to see the scar.
Yes.
And saw the fingers go through the...
Yes. We cannot do it now, huh?
I can.
Just a little bit. Recording.
Ready?
Yes, ready. That's great.
Let's see the scar.
That's great.
We have a lot of these.
That's great. That's beautiful.
I don't know why you
That's
do that, but anyway, I thought it was an interesting
No, but that's
effect.
beautiful, yeah. It's like a moth. It's very beautiful. So many... When you work like this, you discover there's a lot of we can do with the hands and just a piece of body maybe, you know, just a shoulder and textures and...
When I peel the skin.
Yes. We should look at the tape because it's really worth it. And then maybe you turn very, very slowly. That's great. That's great. I think you would like that. It's beautiful.
Tom and I both worked on Aliens, the second in the Alien series. We worked for Stan Winston, who was the creature effects designer on that show. We then went on to form our own company sometime after that, and we were hired to do the creature effects for Alien 3. And that put us in a very logical position to do the effects on Alien Resurrection. So we feel very fortunate to be able to sort of carry the torch from one film to the other. And in fact, other than Sigourney Weaver, we are the longest running veterans of this series.
I've worked with Tom Woodruff and Alec Gillis now for 3 pictures. They do the creature effects, and Tom, in fact, is often the guy in the suit.
The biggest changes we did to the alien was that we wanted to make him seem more cunning or more vicious, and in terms of a way to do that design-wise is, you know, you look for more directional lines, sharper angles, and a lot of the art elements that went into it. We have the dome, for example, is more pointed this time. The chin is more pointed and brought forward. We've exaggerated the shoulders and some of the elements of the rib cage up here to make it stand out more and help reduce some of the forms around it. So again, it's like a process of totally honing, refining something each time you go through it.
The swimming aliens were a whole design issue, and we let the fact that they swam influence the design of the new warrior creatures to a degree. We put a sort of paddle-like blade on the end of the tail.
Yeah, there was an element of the warriors when they're swimming where they were going to be seen at the surface of the water, and they have those four tendril things, those tube shapes that come up off of his back and then the back of his head, and then we did increase the spines along his vertebrae and even down into the tail, so that in swimming you'd be aware of this tail that's propelling him through the water. And ultimately we didn't really get a look at him at the surface of the water like that in the film. He was almost always underwater until he finally broke through the surface.
Generally speaking, the process that we go through to design creature effects for a feature film is that it all starts with the script. Tom and I will sit down with the script, read it, then we will compare notes, kick ideas around, and come up with what we feel is the essence of the character that we're creating and the angle, what makes this show different from other shows that we've done. Once we have sort of a little agreement between ourselves about where we'd like to take it, we then sit down with the director and find out where the director would like to take it.
Nice guys. I love these guys. They made an amazing work. They are very professional, and I love them.
We knew what the style of the alien was that had been established earlier, and we knew how to improve upon it. But we wanted to take it in new directions that would give it even more life. And then from those initial meetings, we started doing sketches and paintings of the various creatures and incarnations of the creatures. And ultimately we went through a sculpture phase where we did small-scale sculptures or maquettes. And we produced a whole shelves full of these little sculptures for Jean-Pierre to look through, and some of them were just, again, merely meant for inspiration. And all of this was done in preparation to full-scale sculpture, and which led us into the full production of the foam skins or the silicone skins, the mechanisms, and finally the paint jobs, and down to the performance on set.
There's a certain amount of the alien that people are very familiar with and they want to be able to recognize, and you have to be true to that. But within that, there's a certain amount of latitude in creatively making some alterations to the sculpture, to some of the materials we use, to the way we mechanize it, even to the way I perform inside the suit, that gives it something a little bit different while still honoring what the audience is coming to see in terms of the creature alien effects.
Tom and Alec never wanted Jean-Pierre to see the alien before the alien was ready, because and they were very, very right with that. And so Jean-Pierre never saw any picture, anything of the alien before the costume was done.
I remember the first day when we saw the alien on the stage during the test.
Of course, he see miniature, he see model, and he sees a lot of things. But the real alien, the first time he saw it, it was for real.
It was Tom inside the suit, and he appeared on the stage.
With Darius to do some really test, camera test, lighting test and stuff.
And it was a complete silence.
Because it was like an alien. And everybody stops.
We had the goosebumps, you know, it was amazing.
Kind of scared. It was really, because it was really an alien. And it was very cool.
Profile. Let's look at the camera.
They are very good for the animatronic, right? And for the suit and for the everything. They are so professional. I love these guys.
The face huggers and the eggs are staples from the previous films, and our job was to update them and bring them into the 1990s. The face huggers themselves were accomplished through a variety of means. We had some that were simply floppy rubber stunt face huggers that could be jerked on lines and tossed around, so on. Sigourney Weaver could wrestle with them, so on. You know, one of them had a tail that was in a coiled position that could, you know, appear to be tightly wrapped around her throat. We had full mechanical face huggers, which were operated by several puppeteers off screen, you know, working levers to make the fingers move, blowing bladders to make the sacks undulate. And then we also had hand puppet versions, which were very effective.
Clamp those fingers down. Good.
Wherein we had puppeteers reaching up into the bodies of the face huggers with mechanical fingers extending out from their fingers, and that allowed us to get nice shots of the creatures scuttling out of the eggs as they opened up. So it's always a variety of techniques that produce the best result. The eggs themselves, early on, Jean-Pierre had commented to us that he felt that in the past films the eggs looked a little mechanical. He, you know, felt that they just sort of opened and that was it.
So this one's curled around a little more, right?
There it is, huh?
Looks fantastic.
That's real pink underneath there, isn't it? Look how red that is.
What were we thinking?
Huh?
So we took that as a challenge, basically, to improve upon the mechanisms of the eggs. So what we did was we gave the egg about probably 25 points of movement as opposed to the 4 that the eggs had in the past, and that included undulating movement on the edges of the petals, so that you could, even if the egg was sitting still before it came to life, you would start to see a little bit of movement, very subtle movement happening. The body would squirm and twist. The opening of the petals actually happened in 3 different segments on the petals. We had air bladders. We had an organ inside that would twist and move, and a sheath would pull off of it before the creature would jump out.
Pulsing bladder, pulsing, and inflate. Yuri. And tail. Tony.
So when we finally saw it, I mean, we showed up to set with about 7 puppeteers to operate this thing, and we shot it, and Jean-Pierre was absolutely ecstatic. He came to us and said, you know, I didn't think that this, you know, with his interpreter, you know, talking, I didn't think that this would be possible, and, you know, thank you. So we knew we had succeeded there.
There's certain aspects to the aliens' life cycle that we've seen before, because this is the 4th movie, so we do want to still give it something new. And of all those stages, I think the chest burster is probably one that is seen in the briefest amount of time. It is basically it's an active creature. It's bursting out of its human host organism.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. All right, let go.
and then it usually disappears and you don't see it again. And there's so much you can do within the context of the time that's allowed to a creature like that. And this time around, we're again making use of materials that we haven't really been able to make use of before. We have thin, translucent skins now that we're able to use, so the creature just looks like more of a pulpy kind of a larval stage of a living creature. It's much more alive looking. We've articulated it to a degree that it's very squirmy, it's very alive, and trying to get the most impact, so as it's bursting out of its host, maybe you're seeing something different, but maybe it's just a subconscious thing that you're feeling that it's a very alive, living creature this time.
When Ripley disappeared on the nest, it was an action scene on the script, and I prefer to modify the scene to have this strange thing much more than bigger word.
Steve Briggs, can we have some thick slime up here for Jonathan Blaney?
The Viper Pit was important. I mean, it was important in terms of the story because it was something that we had never seen before, but it was always sort of in your mind, like, where would these aliens take Ripley if they ever got a hold of her?
Aliens in here. Thought I was going to be alone.
So we knew it was very important to come across with somebody that was terrifying. And what we ended up with was this large living landscape of a 20-foot by 20-foot set piece that basically came to life. It was all containing tentacles and tails of aliens and a couple of aliens in suits and dragging Ripley through it. And I think at one point we must have had probably 25 or 30 puppeteers underneath. In some cases they were people that were just under there holding part of the foam sculpture and moving it, undulating it to keep it alive. Some of them were actually puppeteers performing with a tentacle. I was in a suit.
So we're not using any facial functions on this, right? And we don't know what the movement is yet. Correct. So once you're in the placement, I was thinking if we can get you to sink down in with that kind of wiggling.
No, I didn't open up that slit because of what John Pierre said. So
all right.
I don't know if we want to try that now.
Okay. Maybe we'll get to placement first and get him to approve that, and we'll go from there.
And coming up through a hole and dragging her, and she was being lowered down on a lift. So there was a huge amount of motion and movement going on, and the saving grace there was that it could all happen. You could have all these separate pockets of movement. They didn't have to overlap. It was never one creature that was supposed to be delivering a performance. It was always about a lot of little pockets of living movement bringing this thing to life.
Technically, it was a big undertaking. We're not usually asked to create, in essence, to create sets.
Vinny?
Yes, sir.
Let me get Vinny placed here. Come with me, if you would. Watch, there's a bucket at your feet. You got a big mound of stuff coming up.
And this was a 20 by 20 foot set that was a living sculpture. We went through our processes on a larger scale than we often do. Coordinating the puppeteers is always difficult when you have 25 or 30 puppeteers. It can always be a challenge to coordinate that. We sort of took our cues off of Sigourney because she was the focus of the scene, and everything else we were doing, while it was a background, was also a character in essence, and it symbolically showed her sinking into the world of the aliens. So we talked a little bit with her about what her emotions in the scene would be, and how do we sort of, time our rhythms to that. And these may be things that don't necessarily come across overtly on film, but in a subtextual level they are there. But it really worked. We were very pleased with it. Sigourney said she thought it was one of the most memorable images from any of the films. So we're happy about that. And swipes her face off, kills her.
And there's a sudden different kind of awareness to it when when you first see it, it looks very alien-like, but as it's looking at you, you suddenly realize it's got a whole new dimension to it, something that you haven't seen, and it almost, in many ways, it's what people say makes the alien even scarier, because now it has eyes. Now you can tell when it's aware that you're a potential victim.
The genitals of the newborn was a whole issue. Jean-Pierre was very much adamant that it should have genitals, and that the genitals should look like a cross between male and female. So we came up with something that accomplished that, and looked appropriately disgusting. And but at one point he came back to us. The studio was always very uncomfortable with it, and he was sort of holding them off a little bit. At one point he came back to us and said that he had to actually do digital genital removal, because he said even for a Frenchman it was too much. So we said, okay, we could. It would have been great if we could have made a little appliance to cover it and get us out of that. But I didn't even ask how much they spent removing the genitals.
When I first heard the possibility that I was going to get the gig, I was absolutely on cloud nine, but I wouldn't allow myself to get excited about it because things like that just never work out. I mean, the fact that this one did proves my theory wrong, but up to that point, I was like just convinced this is just too interesting and too ironic and too cool an opportunity to ever actually happen.
That's done all right, Dave. That's David. David, yeah.
You want to sound?
Good job, Dave.
Thank you very much.
We're going to take your head off, man.
I was working with someone at the time named Marina Schwabek, who was developing a project with Tom and Alec, and it was no secret to anybody that I'm an alien fanatic. And when it came time to look for the other aliens that would wear the suits apart from Tom, she threw my name in, and I went in and put on the suit and did an audition, and lo and behold. But the kind of spacier explanation is I've had a ridiculous fixation on aliens since I was 10 when the first movie came out, and had spent countless hours designing my own suits. It was all I wanted. So, I don't know, the fact that I finally got to wear one in a movie proves that childhood dreams do come true, but only the really perverse ones. Part of the requisite for the job was that I had to fit the suits which already existed. They were molded on Tom Woodruff's body. And so I had to be able to fit in those. It's extraordinarily tight. Takes you have to powder the whole thing down just to slip it onto your skin. Takes about, I don't know, just a couple of minutes to get the body of the suit on. It zips up the back. They glue it down. And then gluing down the head and the arms and the feet is what takes time. I guess the whole thing, soup to nuts, is probably about 20 minutes to get onto it. And you're blind, because, or for all intents and purposes, your head is positioned in the neck of the suit. So the neck runs up here, and then the domed head comes up like that. And there's a slit on this side in the rubber and a slit on this side, but you can't see out both at the same time. So if you want to see what's going on ahead of you, you have to tilt your head. No up or down vision at all. You got this 15-pound weight on your head, so you're constantly off balance. Rubber on the bottom of your feet, so and half the time it's covered in slime, so you're always in danger of slipping. And then you get onto the set, and at least in the set that I was on was elevated, and there was a heavy light underneath. I think it was a 10K or something like that, or maybe I think there were 2 or 3 of them. But they were showing up through the grill on the floor, and that just basically is a giant barbecue. So you're standing or lying, as the case may be, on a barbecue grill, and then, which became really scary, actually, because at first you think, well, I can handle this isn't so bad, and then after about 20 minutes, and then half an hour, and then an hour, you're starting to feel like Carl's Jr. burger or something. And then they slime you down with the methicil, which is the substance they use to thicken milkshakes. But which means I will never drink another milkshake after that movie. But they slime you down with the stuff, which, strangely enough, makes you cold. So you have this slime, which lowers your body temperature by God knows how many degrees, 15 degrees or something. It's really chilly. And you're burning at the same time from the grill and the lights. And I don't know how you could possibly do it and not get sick. Some people do, but apparently my fortitude was not strong enough, and I got extremely ill from the constant temperature change. Then, when you're not on the set, if they decide they have about 2 hours or so between setups and you need to be off the set but not out of the suit because they need you to go right away, you sit in a director's chair with 2 C-stands on either side of you with paper towel rolls suspended on the stands to take the weight of the head off of your head, and you sit like this, immobile for 2-3 hours depending. The first day on the set I spent 13 hours in the suit, and of course there's no convenient zippers or anything like that for bathroom breaks, so you just don't eat, you don't drink, and it's sweaty. The whole thing turns into a giant sponge after about 6 hours, and yeah, it's not fun. It's not a fun thing to do. It's an exercise in focus because you have to just completely let go of all of the incredible amount of discomfort that you're in and try to remember that it's fun. I mean, the experience of it is a pain in the ass, but the thing if you keep reminding yourself what you're doing and why, it's, that's more important, I think, than the physical part of it. You're staying mentally fit. It's very easy to get claustrophobic.
2, 1, go!
The other kind of dicey situation you find yourself in this kind of thing is the sequence where Brad Dourif sprays the smoke on you, on the alien. That's CO2, and you're in a very small room, and what CO2 does in a small space is suck all the oxygen out of the room for, a sizable amount of time. If you haven't prepared for it and held your breath, then you could easily end up short and, pass out. So the goal is, we're going to hit you with the stuff. When we say, hold your breath, and then we're going to hit you with it, and then just keep holding it until somebody tells you you can take a breath again. And after about 6 or 7 takes of that, it's pretty scary.
3, 2, 1, action.
It was absolutely worth it. I wouldn't change anything. As all the stuff at the time that was so dangerous or scary or seemed dangerous and all of that stuff, all the discomfort, and none of that really matters. I mean, all that stuff's just sort of fodder for DVD stuff now, and so I'm grateful for that in that respect. And the memory of having done it, the experience of going through that kind of situation and seeing how I respond when things get dicey, that was worth it. And just being able to say that I finally got to wear my alien suit, which I'd been wanting to do since I was 10, and do it in a movie instead of just at a Halloween party or something, is just poetic in the extreme. I think it's just the irony of it is hard to understand unless you're my my mother, who remembers me doing all the suit designs and stuff. It's really a thrill. So yeah, it was absolutely worth it. I don't regret a minute of it, and I'm very grateful to Tom and Alec and Marina and everybody that allowed it to happen. It was a treasured memory, certainly.